Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining in to this webinar on retail and e-commerce. The Sears and Google presenting this webinar on Google Maps platform. We're going to talk about location intelligence, Google Maps platform pertaining to the retail industry and how it can help drive business growth, drive insights, help you with a lot of location data, and how you can implement many use cases in retail. And we'll essentially try and cover most of this over the next 40 minutes or so. I'll just share a brief agenda. Before that, let me quickly introduce ourselves. So my name is Vineet. I lead the Google Maps practice in Sears, and Sears is a Google Premier Partner globally, and we are also location services specialized partner with Google and have been working in this industry for the past decade or so. I'm also joined by Gaurav, who leads the channel sales for India within Google for Google Maps. He'll give a deeper introduction when he begins with the presentation as well. Quickly jumping into the agenda, Gaurav will cover a bit about location intelligence, what's Google Maps platform all about, and then we'll dive a bit into the retail landscape, how Google Maps platform has been helping businesses worldwide. We'll cover some of the top use cases and how Google Maps is implemented by businesses and internal and external facing use cases. What is the business ROI they've been able to derive, and also look at some of these case studies. And if time permits, we also have a few products we've developed on top of Google Maps that can be applied in the retail landscape. So having said that, Gaurav, over to you.
Thank you, first of all, for making time. And I wish all of you are doing well, safe and healthy. All of you, your colleagues, your family members. Challenging times for everyone, but I'm equally hopeful we'll come out of it stronger. So, quick introduction. I lead the Google Maps enterprise sales business for India and neighboring countries like Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. I've been with Google for about 5 years now. And outside of Google, I've done a lot of work in the area of corporate strategy, business development, new product launches. So those are some of the things I'm really passionate about. So there was a recent study which was published which mentioned that almost 80% of the data that we use today has a location component or will have a location component in it. What was even more fascinating was almost all this data was generated in the last 2 years. It is fascinating to understand the speed at which new data is being generated and how location is being increasingly becoming important. Look at the number of IoT devices, look at the number of connected devices. It is another prediction that by 2025, on an average, every person would have about anywhere between 5 to 7 interconnected devices. And you can only begin to imagine the amount of data these devices would generate, and naturally they will have a location component. So when you think of geolocation data, and I'd like you to spend a moment about the role that you play in your organization. And it is likely that, and I can say that with a great degree of confidence, that irrespective of the company or vertical that you come from, and irrespective of the team that you represent, you are likely to be doing one of these 3 things. You are either in a role or a project where you are trying to improve your end customer experience, or you are trying to save time, save cost. You're trying to find out better ways of optimizing the way your company and your operations run, or you are in some way associated with making sure the right strategic decisions are being taken. I mean, strategic decisions could be about where should I open my next store, where should I do my next marketing campaign, and thereabouts. So if the answer is a yes to one or more of these 3, then Google Maps can certainly be of help to you. So having understood briefly why location intelligence is becoming important, we'd like to talk to you a little bit about why we believe Google Maps platform should be considered. And this, what we're going to share with you, is now basis some data that we have, and of course also basis the customer feedback that we've generated who've been using our platform. To begin with, when anyone looks at a mapping platform, the first ask almost is that you'd want a platform which gives you real-time and accurate data, and which is where Google Maps platform, we do on an average about 25 million updates a day, which goes to show that by the time we are done with the webinar, we would have probably done about 2.5 million updates or more. And that goes to show the strength of the data platform that we have, which really forms the backbone of uh, any company when it is trying to use a location platform. The second thing is, apart from the data being real-time accurate, our customers also expect this data to be very rich. And how do we make sure we do that? So we, of course, use a lot of satellite imagery. We also get a lot of data powered through Android devices. We also do a lot of crowdsourcing. We have power users who give us a lot of feedback. And last but not the least, we have what we call as local guides, who actually give us a lot of input about roads, about U-turns, about new commercial establishments, reviews, ratings. Some of these screenshots that you see in front of you are reflective of that quality of richness of that data. So that's the second reason why Google Maps platform could be a potential platform of your choice. So real-time data, accurate data, and rich data. Moving to the third reason that our customers tell us, and it may appear as a very soft reason, but a very critical reason, is that we all, when we want to work on our product, when we want to work on our process, we want to make things very easy for our end customers who are actually going to be consuming our platform. And familiarity with UI interface becomes very relevant. Google Maps globally is used by more than billion users, and they are used to it because we have a consumer version of the application as well. They are familiar with it, they're comfortable with it. And if your website, if your application has a similar UI, it is likely that they are going to find it more comfortable to adapt to it. So that's the third reason why we recommend you consider us. While we may be talking to some of you who may be a pure Indian organization, some of you may be more international in nature, but in today's time, I don't think any of us can really operate in isolation. All of us are working in an ecosystem where we are either engaging with partners who are international, or we are sourcing from international companies, or we are selling to international geographies. So we eventually end up being in an international ecosystem, and hence would love to have a platform where we don't have to change too much, right? Irrespective of the country that we go in. And that is exactly where Google Maps platform comes in handy. We pretty much have the entire world mapped out for you. It works in most of the international languages. It covers most of the roads. Some of the unique things, one of the probably the only few platforms which also give you live traffic data, which helps you predict the right ETA, etc. So that's another reason why clients love to work with Google Maps. Sort of almost concluding, and I'll talk a little more about it when we talk about the commercial model, is the model now is built in a fashion that it scales with your needs. It grows as you grow, and it works seamlessly with your other platforms as well. And it is hence not a surprise that all small and big companies use us. Here's an interesting myth that Google Maps is more relevant for a large company or a multinational company or a small company. Neither of those statements are true. Our platform and model is built exactly in the same fashion that can be used very well for a small company, exactly how it will be used for a large company. And which is why there are millions of applications and websites globally who use us. And which is a good segue into our next slide, where I'd like to briefly talk about the way the commercial model is structured. It just sets you up very easily. So the commercial model has undergone a little bit of a change. Those of you who may have worked with us in the past would know we used to have a commercial model which expected you to make year-long commitments, buy things in bulk, and all of that did not really work for a lot of our customers. So what we've done is we've changed our commercial model. Really is based on consumption. So it is very easy to start. I mean, all you really need to do is to let us know that you would like to start using, and we'll set you up with Sears, and every end of the month you will get a bill basis the consumption that you've had. First $200 comes free of cost. So if you don't use anything, or if you use very little, which is less than $200, then it comes free of cost. Anything more than that gets charged. What we've also done is we've made our pricing in a very tiered structured format, which you see a screenshot here, which basically tells you that it's almost like a rate card, that you are free to choose whichever API you want, and as and when your consumption keeps increasing, you start getting an automatically discounted price I'm just looking at an example on the screen. Sort of a $2 becomes $1.06 or 60 cents, and so on and so forth. You automatically start enjoying a discounted price as you keep going from tier to tier. And that's one advantage of working with a partner like Sears, would be able to not only set you up, offer you a discounted price, but a partner like Sears is also able to build a full technology stack on top of these APIs, because these APIs alone can do very little. You do need a tech layer in between. I mean, it could be your own company if you are technically very sound, or you may think that you could do it, but that's not your core operations, and hence you'd like to engage with somebody like a Sears who could really help you. And that's exactly the value add that Sears brings on the table. They've been working with many customers like yours, so they are able to bring in a lot of perspective, best practices, case studies of how some of the pain points that you may be facing, they've solved for customers before. And let's focus on some of the very interesting use cases in your industry that we have solved for other clients, and then we'll save the last 20 minutes, which I personally find most engaging, is the Q&A part. Thank you so much for your attention and your time. Over to you, Vineet and team.
Thanks so much, Gaurav. That was pretty insightful. And like Gaurav said, this is a good segue into speaking a bit about retail and e-commerce and industries where most of you have spent your professional careers in, and trying to tell you where Google Maps platform comes in with the whole context of location intelligence and how Google Maps platform helps companies achieve a lot of business growth through it. So we wanted to cover some of these pain points, and then as and when we cover these, you would obviously have more questions that you can share here. And all the number one pain points that we've seen in the space of retail, and now with the given scenario changing of companies and retail moving online, we are seeing shopping cart abandonment being one of the largest pain points that e-commerce companies have been trying to resolve for the last so many years. And now that retail is moving online, we see a lot of our retail customers come to us and try and figure out how could we implement interesting use cases to lower this. Some studies have also shown that shopping cart abandonment rate is very, very high. It's almost 3/4 of all the engagement online is leading to an abandonment. So how could probably Google Maps platform come into support here? One of the most widely used APIs within the Google Maps platform is something called Places API, which is the entire data of places that Google has related to places nearby, place details, opening hours, closing hours, and addresses, contacts, etc. So Places Autocomplete, which all of us have maybe used on a day-to-day basis on either on Google Maps, the consumer version, or on any ride-sharing platform that we use, or even on our food delivery apps. It's basically this, having someone fill in shipping address by just entering a few keystrokes rather than filling out everything on the form one by one. So this saves so much time and becomes so intuitive to a customer. This automatically reduces the time taken to fill out your shopping cart and finish the whole experience. So through this very simple implementation, we've seen companies who've implemented Places Autocomplete on the checkout page, or even when you're collecting addresses of your end customers, there is a major dropout reduction and that much percentage faster or transaction complete. So this is a very big use case that is implemented across e-commerce channels, across retail channels to help fulfill orders faster. There's an interesting case study. We'll also link this when we publish this webinar to YouTube in the description, where Maxida, it's based in Benelux in Europe, and they use Places Autocomplete extensively. You can maybe go online and see how they work. So their digital leads have also shared that it's almost leading to a 20% increase in conversion rate since they've made the checkout process easier. So this is a real world example of how it's implemented. Another pain point that we've seen is, and this is going to get exacerbated with the recent situation, lots of people will be averse to going to brick and mortar stores. So footfall is obviously going to decrease more and more, and people are going to want to make sure that decisions are made faster. They want some kind of supplement to the offline flow of purchase online as well. So this is something that we've seen come up, and we're working with lots of retail giants, startups, in trying to implement some use cases to help reduce some of these pain points. So trying to drive more in-store traffic, trying to find the nearest store, where is customer traffic coming from, which store has what inventory, all this information, if we make available to a customer readily, they would be more than happy to attach to your brand, to your company, and make sure that they shop more online and also are able to continue to engage offline as well. So how do we do it? A smart store locator, if implemented on your website, is one of the easiest, quickest, and probably the most intuitive ways to drive customer traffic. Now that customers would be spending a lot of time trying to search online for something that they need faster, given that e-commerce giants are also taking some time in delivering essentials, or maybe even your favorite pair of jeans, they would essentially go to a nearby lifestyle store or try and figure out where could they find a certain piece of clothing or even something like an accessory online. So if your website had a smart store locator with inventory, with directions, distance, everything on your website itself, and a customer essentially did not have to go to Google Maps to try and figure out where everything was, that would end up being a really good addition. So you can look at this quick video where you're able to see what kind of filters are also applicable here. You're merging Google Maps data, showing everything on a map, along with your own data, where you can find out what branches have what kind of information, what are the store open, close times, even give direct contact numbers. So all this information online helps a lot, and add to it some of these interesting APIs of Google Maps to give directions, distance on your website itself through these APIs. That would make for a very seamless customer experience, keeping the customers or visitors on your website itself and not having them redirect to even Google Maps to figure out how to get to your store faster. So this is a very simple implementation of Google Maps. Zeiss implements this. There are many companies who implement this, banks, retail stores, your favorite coffee shops. They do this a lot. So if you're not doing this, is something that you should definitely consider. From the previous pain point, we can get to the next one. Similar to what we were talking about earlier, where customers are on the move, they are trying to spend very little time in store, they're trying to make decisions on much faster, trying to spend as much time away from crowded areas. And you also have a mandate to ensure that your stores are as less crowded as possible. So here, trying to help them place their orders before they arrive, and just making sure the in-store experience and the out-of-store experience is as seamless as possible is probably the drive behind this use case. So ordering online and collecting offline, trying to implement something like a click and collect is what is the third use case of Google Maps. And you can go online and search for Starbucks, even Cafe Coffee Day, and then there are other retail players also, not just in this space, that are implementing this use case quite a bit. So go online, find the nearest store, order online, and then get to know how fast your order would be ready. You know your ETA through Google Maps APIs. You're able to enter in your specific address and figure out which is the nearest store to you. So places autocomplete comes in, directions comes in, and you're able to maybe imagine how easy it becomes for an end customer to first find you, order online, and then quickly pick up and go wherever they need to go. So this is another use case that is really popular now, given the situation we are in. So, and final, case study again on how it's being implemented by lifestyle stores. You can maybe go online and check this as well. There are different shipping methods given when you check out. You would also see Amazons of the world implementing this, where you can pick up your deliveries instead of having to have it delivered home. So yeah, adds to that layer of safety as well, which we are all gunning for nowadays. So yeah, those were some of those major use cases in retail and e-commerce that we wanted to delve on. Beyond that, there are some additional use cases which are more internal to you. Driving operational efficiency is one such major avenue where lots of retail and e-commerce players are spending a lot of time. So last mile delivery becomes very important. Uh, Obviously, routing algorithms built on top of Google Maps, taking into consideration real-time traffic, is something that is very important for lots of companies right now in the space of last mile, where deliveries have picked up immensely, given that footfall or offline traffic is very low. Again, for folks who are involved in, say, the entire supply chain of retail, trying to figure out where your team is, if the stores are adequately stocked, ensuring that the team is able to visit and service maximum retailers or maybe warehouses, distributors. So improving the service and streamline teams in their operational efficiency is something that is another use case where internally it helps a lot in boosting overall efficiencies. And finally, capacity management, knowing how well a warehouse or a store is stocked, knowing where the nearest distributor is, knowing how best to route them, and ensure that you're managing your capacity in the most efficient manner possible, not knowing what the scenarios might be right now, given the uncertainties of the times we live in. There's something that can also be implemented using Google Maps APIs. An interesting development over the past year or so that most of you must have heard of, and again, pertinent to India, given that we have so many problems related to addresses, related to finding the right location to deliver to, is something called plus codes. So every point on the planet can now be referenced by using a plus code. It's a huge, huge change in how we are managing last mile deliveries. Instead of having someone figure out what their exact address is, you can just geotag that person and just figure out the plus code of that particular location. It needn't even have a pin code, it needn't even have an address. And looking at some of the data here, half of the world's population is living on unnamed streets, and this problem is probably magnified in India, where we see sometimes addresses entered which we cannot even make out. It could be anything. These cases, plus codes becomes very, very important. So you'll have a global code for almost a latitude, longitude, where it's divided into an area code and the local code, and you can differentiate all your addresses, all your maybe catchment areas, delivery zones into different plus codes, and then really just forget about having to worry about addresses or how you could maybe implement this in your entire supply chain. So this is a very, very good development in the overall ecosystem of Google Maps and location intelligence. Many, many applications of plus codes across industries, across domains. You could maybe look at it from a transportation perspective, emergency services perspective, or even for small businesses for deliveries. And it's probably the greatest revolution in the space of location intelligence that we've seen in the recent times. So if you're not implementing this, we'd be more than happy to help you understand how best to go about using plus codes to redefine your entire last mile, first mile, middle mile deliveries. So that covers mostly the use cases. Maybe just quickly to deep dive into how does all this work. So imagine your application or your website. What you get with Google Maps platform is the base layer of Google Maps, all the places data, maps imagery, and all the directions, distances, routing data is all combined into Google Maps platform. You can use whatever you want to, like Gaurav shared in the previous slides. It's as easy as clicking a button and enabling an API to start using it. You, again, don't have to subscribe to a bunch of APIs. You can start using just one API if you want to and just be charged for that. So all that data is available for you to build on top of. So you will use additional data like inventory of a store, where your team is, or even things related to what are your store opening and closing times, or your warehouse inventory and things like that. And on top of it, you can add even more third-party data related to your customers, where is most of your business coming from, point of sale data, and just build out a very intelligent platform for different use cases. So this is just a representation of how any application or any website or a customer-facing UI could be built out. And this is what it would probably look like. As soon as you add data on a map, you can visualize lots of things related to a population, related to sales data, create heat maps on which regions are doing well, where you are well stocked, where there is a supply chain gap, where probably your competitors are doing well, and even map out an area, try and figure out if the places around your around the point of interest or point of sale, do they have restaurants, do they have cafes, what is the nearest ATM, and just build out something like an intelligence platform for you also to visualize your entire supply chain and sales, etc. So yeah, I think what we also have built out on top of Maps are some plug-and-play solutions, while many of you would also have your own tech teams who are ready to go ahead and build out applications that you desire. Just to aid that process, we at Sears have also had many plug-and-play products built on top of Google Cloud and Google Maps, which can be directly implemented and help you achieve quite a few use cases. We've just added some screens here, given the time we have, and also because of the bandwidth that might be an issue, but we'd love to maybe set up follow-up demos where we can go deeper into any of these. So please feel free to mention in the feedback form or in an email to us if you think any of these products or solutions are something that you'd be interested in. We'll set up a detailed deep dive demo. The first one is route logic. As the name suggests, just a routing algorithm that will help you move most of your offline channels to an online platform for managing your deliveries. It's as simple as just pasting a website URL and uploading your offline orders online and just entering how many delivery personnel you have. And you're able to batch orders, you're able to batch deliveries, and get in return through Google Maps APIs on what would be the best optimized route for making those deliveries on any given day and any given time, with the traffic situation changing on almost an hourly basis. So this basically helps in your overall routing planning and algorithms. The SmartStore Locator, if you've not yet implemented a store branch locator on your website or your mobile app, this is again a very readily available, ready to use SmartStore Locator. You can see some of these screens here helping your customers define a radius around their specific location, and then popping up which all points of sales are available nearby, and then also giving them directions to reach that point. All this again on your website itself. No need to go to Google Maps. Everything achieved through the platform itself. Another interesting thing that we are working on right now through third-party data integrators in India is on defining COVID hotspots. So essentially, think of things like deliveries or transportation of your employees, where you would not want them to travel via containment zones, giving them information on what could be the containment zones and helping them route better. This shows you, maybe even tell you around a store, or if your own store is lying in a containment zone, obviously you don't want to have customers go online, search for that store and go to that store. You would want to show something else. So just showing all the COVID hotspots on a map. There's again a third-party data integration that we do on top of Google Maps platform to be able to show all this data and give you more information. So multiple use cases again can be achieved using this. And finally, this is again an HR module, manages the employee life cycle from onboarding to offboarding, helps you with knowing exactly where your field sales reps are. Given this situation, you can also have them mark their attendance remotely and even manage things like routing them in case they have multiple deliveries to make or multiple sales calls or just check-ins with retailers and things like that. You can see that there is a meeting management module, again integrated with Google Maps, so that each meeting is available on a map for them to see, for them to route. And you can also help them with things like checking in, completing a meeting, and gives overall visibility to your field force and essentially helps manage operational efficiency again. So it's called Happier Track, built as a module within our HR platform called Happier Work. So that's about it. Quickly, a bit about Sears before we open the floor for more questions. We have been working with Google as a partner for the last 15 years or so now, and are based across various locations within India, headquartered in Pune, but have sales and technology centers across all the cities, all the major cities. We are in 14 plus locations. And like I said before, we are also specialized partners for Google in various areas. This has been our overall journey since we started, and work across the platforms on Google related to Google Cloud, G Suite, Google Maps, and also additional products in the ecosystem. Like I mentioned before, we are also a specialization partner for location-based services. What this means is that our team of Google engineers are technically capable of implementing multiple use cases on top of location-based intelligence, on top of Google Maps platform. And we've been known to consult and assist customers in helping them address multiple problems, multiple use cases. And hence there is this tag, additional tag beyond the Premier Partner tag that Google affords to some of its partners who have shown success in particular areas. So we have done that in location-based services, and we are a specialization partner. And we've also been a Google award-winning partner for the last 4 years now, and yeah, continue. Like Gaurav mentioned initially in the pricing table, with a partner, what you also get access to is something called volume discounts. As you grow in your usage, as you grow as far as your use cases grow, your per unit cost of using Google Maps platform keeps coming down, and the discounts add up to almost like an 85 to 90% on the base level. So this is something that can be leveraged through a simple partner billing account itself. So there are additional benefits from a monetary perspective, from a consulting perspective, from a technical perspective as well. Some of these things are again summarized here, related to the kind of services, support, and account management that you would get with a Google partner like Sears, related to usage optimization, consulting workshops, continuous engagement with Google, getting to know what's happening in the overall ecosystem of Google Maps and Google Cloud. And then there are additional opportunities of joint marketing as well. We do lots of case studies with Google. So some of the case studies that you saw earlier in the slides could also be your company featured on the Google websites and showing how you've been able to implement Google Maps platform. So there are lots of these things that we also do beyond just the regular reselling side of things as a partner. Thanks so much, Gaurav, for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for your time.